Of the drivers in the top 40 in points, only 15 of them qualified for this race. Several of the drivers who didn't qualify had won races earlier in the season, such as Bobby Porteau, Libby Bell, Todd Wlodarczyk, Joseph Howard, Greg Woodard, who won the second round at Mosport last week, also failed to qualify. Yevgeny Kuznetsov was an especially unpopular DNQ. There were also a number of cars that we were expecting to make it, but they didn't. Both of the Dalitz cars failed to qualify. The two full-time Kurt Walker cars failed to qualify. Walker himself will be in the race, though. You also might have seen that little note next to Eric Jackson's name. Jackson originally failed to qualify for the race, but Gravity Racing switched him out with Rush McLeod so that Jackson can remain in a good position in the points. Points leader Ebenezer Quiggles Jr. would have been on that list as well. He did not finish in a transfer spot in his qualifying race, but a few weeks earlier it was announced that the highest driver in points who did not get into the race would be awarded a provisional spot, and, well, being the points leader, the spot naturally went to Quiggles. This did not sit well with a number of people who said that perhaps Quiggles was sandbagging during the qualifiers because he was guaranteed to get into the race. Yeah, Quiggles definitely didn't seem to be on top of his game, especially after he's been running so well earlier in the season. Honestly, I wouldn't be terribly surprised if he was sandbagging. Now, for those of you who have not been keeping a close eye on the Mini Indy 500 within the last few weeks, this is how the race will be run. This race will be made up of 3 segments. The first 2 segments will be 200 laps each, and then the third will be a 100-lap sprint. At the end of each segment, all cars within 5 laps of the leader will transfer over to the next segment and get back on the lead lap, and the leader at the end of the first 2 segments will be awarded 20 bonus points. And now it is time to go through our starting lineup. On the outside of row number 21 will be Rachel Rainsford, who won her qualifying race, but she had a very poor run in the time trials, which puts her in last, and Ryan Reffett is on her inside. On the outside of row 20 is Bixby Foot. Power Steering Incorporated elected not to switch him out with Libby Bell, and Zachary Zins is on his inside. On the outside of row 19 is John Hawks making his first Arla Elite Series start with Kelly Splicen on his inside. Row 18 will be Frank Azure and Nikos Kostopoulos. Kostopoulos has a couple of top 10 finishes this season, and Frank Azure got both of his cars into the race. Row 17 will be Ben Atkins in the only Eichholz Autosport car in the field, and then Nick Azure in the other Frank Azure car. Row 16 will be Dan Leichleiter, who competed in last year's Rockford 200, and Leslie Riggs, who is bringing out a new paint job this week. Vincenzo Foce-Sauto will be making his first Arla Elite Series start in the 37V, with Dale Hill on his inside in the Bobby Dollar car. Laura Cyrus starts on the outside of row 14. She is having one of her best seasons ever, and on her inside is rookie Jennifer Goodwin. Dan Richards is making his first Arla Elite Series start. He starts on the outside of row 13, and Allie Riggs, who had 3 wins last year but is really struggling this season, starts on his inside. Casey Campbell is the only Griesberger driver in the field today, and on her inside is Joe Olenek, the ASCC regular, making his first Arla start. On the outside of row 11 is Philip Borland. Bob Steffen starts on his inside. Row 10 will be Nick Howard and Michael Madrigal. Madrigal has had some of the better luck of the M&J drivers this season. On the outside of row number 9 is Lucas Sweeney, and on his inside is Team Lights regular Mike Andrews, who is running a limited Arla schedule this season. Row number 8 will be the MRD cars of Jim Hayes and Kyle Gaffigan. Hayes is another Team Lights driver, and he's making his first start of the season. Kiriki Itsuno, another MRD driver, is on the outside of row 7, and on her inside is Jared Worth, who has shown a lot of promise in his few starts in this series. Defending series champion Kevin Monroe is on the outside of row 6, and on his inside is Herbie Finkelberg, who has been very quick this week. And as we get into the top 10, the outside of row 5 is rookie Tiffany Matthews, and on her inside is former 4-time series champion Andy Pearson. Row 4 is Kurt Walker, the only representative of his own team on the grid. Lane Cranston is on his inside in one of his better qualifying efforts of the year. Row 3 will be Trey Ashby and Mississippi State Sheriff J.W. Lester making his first Arla start. Ebenezer Quiggles Jr. and Eric Jackson share the second row. And finally, the front row of the Mini Indy 500 will be David Krikorian and Ashley Tucker. Tucker was the only driver to set a time in the 19-second bracket in pole qualifying. I wonder whether or not Ashley Tucker's going to try to knock down the wall as she tends to do when she's out front. Tucker gets a pretty good start as the Mini Indy 500 gets underway, but Eric Jackson is right on her tail. He did a great job anticipating that start, but Tucker has quite a good run off of turn number 2. I see that Jackson is being overpowered by the 32 in the corners. You'd better have your car set up to turn really well if you're going to try to make a pass on the inside at this track. And here we see Krikorian going for the lead now. The experienced ex-Master Cup driver versus the not even 20-year-old rookie. Krikorian has the momentum off the corner, and he will complete the pass on the outside. But Tucker tries to battle back. Ebenezer Quiggles peeked to the inside of the 32. I'm wondering if he was thinking about making it 3 wide, but obviously he seems to have thought better of it. Oh, but now he's trying again. Krikorian runs the corner wide, and Quiggles will have a huge run off of 2. He takes the lead in a very ambitious maneuver for the beginning of this race, but he did so cleanly. This is definitely not the Quiggles we saw struggling in the qualifying races, so either that team has perfected their setup in between the qualifiers and tonight, or they were sandbagging in the qualifiers. On lap number 5, Ben Atkins will have to pit from the 28th position. This has obviously not been Atkins' dream season, but this isn't going to take him out of the running for the win. He will have the chance to get back on the lead lap in between segments. J.W. Lester in the 5-0 car is doing a good job holding his own in the opening laps. He is currently second. But Jim Hayes is battling with Kurt Walker for the 3rd spot in the number 26 car for MRD Motorsports, which has been kind of a 5th wheel for that team this year. That car hasn't been anywhere near the front, but Hayes is doing wonders this week. I'm not too surprised. Hayes is a part of Tonnerre's racing program, and they put a lot of focus on the short tracks. Andy Pearson has to pit from 17th on lap 15. We believe he had the same problem as Ben Atkins, which was a cut tire. But again, it's not going to be the end of the world if you pit and fall a couple laps down. The first caution came out on lap 22, and it involves Bigsby Foot as he sort of drifts into Allie Riggs coming into turn 1, taking both cars into the wall. Remember, Power Steering Incorporated elected not to switch out Bigsby Foot with Libby Bell, who was higher in points but failed to qualify. But it looks like Foot's demonstrating that maybe that wasn't the greatest idea. Just about the entire field pitted under this caution. A few cars fell a lap down due to all the congestion on pit road. J.W. Lester is the leader on the restart. Rachel Rainsford and I believe that is Nick Azure are the last cars on the lead lap, and you probably saw that Eric Jackson had a tire go down on him coming to the restart. Ashley Tucker has made her way back up to second through pit stops. Philip Borland is third. Andy Pearson has blown up, so that team has had more problems than just a cut tire. And you probably saw Trey Ashby coming out of the pits in that shot of Pearson. Ashby has been very fast all week, but obviously he is not in contention for the lead at the moment. Philip Borland was well off the pace at Mosport last week in the rain, but he is making up for that with another top 5 run for the Math Motors team this week. Granted, we are still in the opening laps, but it's good to see that this team has improved so much over last year. And right here we see Frank Azure running over the 23 of Joe Olenek, and that collects Dale Hill in the 098. We didn't pick up any sort of scuffle between those two, so I'm not sure what Frank Azure was doing. Let's go on board with Azure. He's got a bit of a run coming off in turn 2. Olenek and Zachary Zins are battling for position, and Azure just seems to not notice Olenek. If he's going to lapse like that this early in the race, then I'm not sure I want to see what is going to happen 300 laps from now. Philip Borland led on the restart with Herbie Finkelberg in second, but Borland has opened up quite a nice gap over Finkelberg right now. In addition to sharing the pie car with Vijay Pashanda, Borland is also scheduled to run a few races in the 89 car for A1 Racing. In fact, at the beginning of the season, Borland announced his intention to run for the championship while driving 2 different cars, but the funding for Borland to run the whole schedule has not materialized. Bob Steffens blows up in the number 211 Big Bunny Tonnerre. Steffens is still searching for his first Arla win after a number of years on the circuit. Frank Azure gets into another incident, this time not of his own doing, as Kurt Walker gets into the back of Ryan Reffett coming off at turn 4, and Frank Azure sweeps across the front bumper of Zachary Zins. Zins gets jacked up by Trey Ashby. Dan Leitleiter in the 10L and Lane Cranston in the 114 are involved. David Krikorian took an especially hard hit into the inside wall. That's going to put a damper on Krikorian's night after he started on the outside pole. And I see that this was how Lane Cranston got involved. Krikorian swept back across the track, and Cranston had nowhere to go. Philip Borland continues to lead over Herbie Finkelberg after the restart, but Finkelberg would soon be challenged by John Hawks in the 945, making his Arla debut, and he intends to make a very big first impression. I'm wondering where MT Motorsports got the funding to field a second car for this race. They barely have enough money to keep the 114 car on the grid. At least from what I've seen, that car has absolutely no sponsorship decals on it whatsoever. But entering John Hawks in this race seems to have been a very good investment so far. But Hawks would soon fall victim to J.W. Lester, who again is another one of the debutante drivers. A few weeks before the race, Lester picked up sponsorship from Donuts, which is a small chain of donut shops in the Midwest. I bet Donuts loves how fitting that sponsorship deal is. But they're definitely getting a great deal of exposure with Lester running in second. And it didn't take Lester too long to run down Philip Borland, although he had a little bit of help from lap traffic, as Borland is currently stuck behind David Krikorian. Borland is really trying to hang on to the lead. He's got Lester at bay coming through 1 and 2, but I think Lester's going to have the upper hand in the next set of corners, and he does as J.W. Lester completes the pass. But then it would be Lester's turn to get held up by David Krikorian, and Philip Borland capitalizes by jumping to the outside of the 5-0 car, and he will take the lead back. However, Lester comes back and tells Borland, no, I insist that you've hogged the spotlight for long enough. It is my turn now. So Lester jumps to the outside and makes it look easy as he gets past Borland. Ebenezer Quiggles' car has come back to life. He is chasing down Philip Borland for the second spot. The former TM Lights driver is a rookie in this series, and he is already going for his third win. Oh yeah, he's also the current points leader. So, if he keeps up his current pace, we could potentially be facing a rookie champion. Dale Hill's battered 098 car gives up on him. Hill is coming off of a 6th place finish at Mosport. He battled through the torrential rains to get that position, but he's not going to get that same result tonight. Philip Borland took the lead back through pit stops. Herbie Finkelberg is second, and Michael Madrigal has made his way up to third. Leslie Riggs is currently running in the 4th position, but she's got to watch out for Frank Azure right behind her.
You say that as if he's been a lethal weapon today.
Anyway, Riggs has had a number of good runs this season, coming back from her injury in 2011, but before she can prove that her injury hasn't affected her, she is often bitten by mechanical problems. Michael Madrigal is also having a very good run in this first segment. We mentioned earlier that Madrigal has had the best season of the M&J drivers this year. He has not been plagued with as many crashes and mechanical problems as his teammates, and so he is rather high up in the point standings compared to everybody else on that team. It seems like every few years, M&J just has a Murphy's Law season. Remember a few years ago, I think it was 2009, where their season was filled with nothing but bad things. Ebenezer Quiggles is now coming after J.W. Lester for second. Quiggles is now one of the fastest cars on the track. He is significantly faster than the leader Philip Borland. And so it didn't take him long to chase the Pie car down. And it looks like he's setting Borland up for a move on the inside, something that we have not seen much of tonight.
He was definitely looking, but I don't think he would have gotten the job done if he had tried.
Now Borland gets a little bit loose. Here comes Quiggles. But Borland does salvage a bit of momentum off the corner, and he keeps the lead, for now at least. But here comes Quiggles again. He's almost pushing Borland down the backstretch. And, I think he just pressured Borland into a mistake. And here comes Quiggles on the inside. I think that's a pretty good indicator of how confident Quiggles is in his car today. He seemed really dedicated to getting Borland on the inside. Borland is trying to come back now, but it's kind of difficult to tell who has the upper hand. Borland's got the preferred line, but Quiggles' car seems to turn very well. They're still neck and neck off of 4. This is one of the best battles we've seen so far tonight, but Quiggles finally gets a good run into the corner, and he's able to clear Borland for the lead, and Ebenezer Quiggles Jr. will go on to take the first segment and the 20 bonus points that go along with it. Everybody who is still running was within 5 laps of the leader, and so if you were still running, you made it into the second segment. 36 cars will transfer over. Jennifer Goodwin is the last of them. She and Trey Ashby were both 5 laps down. We missed Casey Campbell going out of the race due to an engine issue with 50 laps to go. On the restart, it is Quiggles and Lester up front. Quiggles gets a pretty good start, but J.W. Lester is really trying to hang on, and here he comes. He gets a big run off the corner, and Lester sweeps into the lead. The top 2 are going to start to break away from the rest of the field as they battle for position themselves. Caution 5 comes out on lap 208 as Laura Cyrus is putting a lot of pressure on John Hawks in the 945. She gets into the back of him, and then Hawks comes back across Cyrus's bumper and takes himself into the wall, and Cyrus goes around as well.
I'm not sure what Cyrus was trying to accomplish roughing people up when we're not even halfway through this race.
While this was going on, J.W. Lester has a mechanical problem. Tough break for the 5-0 team, but if they can stay within 5 laps of the leader, then they'll be in good shape for the next segment. Philip Borland's crew continues to be very quick as the night goes on, and so he leads on the restart. And right behind him, Vincenzo Focesato is up to the second spot, although he is being challenged by Mike Andrews in the 500 at the moment. Jared Worth has to bring his 08 car into the pits for a flat tire. More problems for J.W. Lester as he has a tire go down as well, and he pulls into Dan Richards trying to get into the pit lane, and he completely misses the pit entrance. So after a brilliant start to J.W. Lester's debut, his night quickly goes downhill. Riding on board with second place Mike Andrews, you see that Philip Borland has opened up a very comfortable lead. Andrews ran Arla for a number of years before moving on to the TM Lights, and he did not do his reputation too much good towards the beginning of the season. He got himself into a number of rather silly incidents, but he's been driving much cleaner as the year goes on.
Andrews has always been a rather clean driver, so it's kind of weird to see that from him.
Here's Ben Atkins running mid-pack. Go! Hang on to it. Atkins just got run over by Herbie Finkelberg.
It's nice to see everybody driving so patiently.
And then we've got more problems up ahead. Leslie Riggs has Kurt Walker all over her back bumper, and he turns her onto the apron. Riggs tries to get back onto the track, and oh, she gets into Walker, and that stuffs one of the Azure cars into the wall. I think that was Nick Azure in the 46A. I think it's safe to say that Riggs wasn't too happy with Walker there.
Wow, that was really boneheaded and dangerous for someone who's been pushing for so much safety research lately.
Of course, Riggs recently became a spokesperson for the Institute of Sports Injury Prevention, but yeah, I have to agree that is kind of out of line for someone with ties to that organization. But I'm sure she's got to be frustrated at people just not showing her any respect out there. Anyway, Walker had to pit for his damage, and it didn't take Philip Borland long to encounter him afterwards. J.W. Lester is running a few laps down after the problems that he has had in this segment, but he is still just as fast as he was towards the beginning of the race. He is currently trying to get around second place Mike Andrews, and is having a rather easy time at doing so. I'd say he could definitely be a threat to win in his debut if he gets back on the lead lap in the final 100 laps. Speaking of second place, here's the battle for that position heating up right now. Lucas Sweeney in the 8 mounts a charge on the outside of Mike Andrews. He sweeps by him rather easily. Kiriki Hitsuno is lurking back in the 4th position. This has been one of her better runs of the year so far, and Vincenzo Focesato is still in the 5th spot. He's been having a very impressive run in his debut, along with J.W. Lester. But do not count out Ebenezer Quiggles Jr. That most recent cycle of pit stops set him back a little bit, but he's been on a tear through this long green flag run, and he has made his way back up into the top 5. J.W. Lester has made his way up to Philip Borland, and he's going to get by the pie car with relative ease. Remember, this is not a battle for position, but I think we could have a position battle shortly. Lucas Sweeney has slowly been reeling in Philip Borland. Sweeney, the son of 2-time Arla champion Paul Sweeney, has not won a race since Talladega last year, but I think he's definitely got a contending car tonight. But Sweeney then would have to deal with the lap car of Ryan Reffett, and he's definitely not showing much patience for Reffett. He pushes the 61 all the way through the corner and almost spins him out.
Both of the part-time Terra International Motorsports cars were able to make it into the race, but they have not shown too much speed tonight. But interestingly enough, their full-time driver Greg Woodard failed to qualify.
And now John Hawks has more problems as he makes contact with the 58 car of Nick Howard. I think he was trying to pit. Oh, and he gets hit by one of the Azure cars. I believe it was Frank Azure that hit him. It looks like Azure just didn't know where the 945 was going. However, Azure was able to continue. Both of the Azure cars getting into the race was one of the feel-good stories of this week, but this hasn't been a terribly clean race for them so far. Lucas Sweeney leads on the restart after Philip Borland pitted. He's got Kiriki Hitsuno and Ben Atkins right behind him. Tiffany Matthews is in fourth. This has been one of Matthews' better runs of the year. She's coming off of a couple of pretty good finishes, which have got to be a good morale boost for that team, especially after that pair of races where she didn't even make it past the first corners. And now Hitsuno's taking a look at the inside of Lucas Sweeney. She wants the lead, and it looks like she's got a car that's pretty well suited to that inside line. She can't quite get the job done this time, though, but she gets a pretty decent run into one. However, Sweeney has a lot more momentum off the corner. And now Tiffany Matthews is mounting a charge on Hitsuno for second.
I guess Hitsuno's car wasn't too good on the inside line after all, because Matthews was able to get by her pretty easily.
Allie Riggs is lurking back in fifth. Riggs is another one of those drivers who is having one of her better runs of the year tonight.
Rumor has it that a number of people want her out at Riggs Motorsports. Of course, that team is owned by her family, but I wouldn't be terribly surprised if that is true. I see Kevin Monroe's car is still holding up quite nicely, and he's making good use of that opportunity by running up inside the top 10.
But then we got another caution. On lap 277, Michael Madrigal hooks Ashley Tucker. Tucker goes into the wall and back up into Eric Jackson, and Tucker does a few rolls down into turn number 3, collecting several other cars. A very frightening incident will take Ashley Tucker, the pole sitter, out of the race, as well as Philip Borland, who had one of the fastest cars all night long. David Krikorian also took a big hit into the inside wall, and Borland just gets blindsided by Tucker's rolling car, so that's a very, very unfortunate turn of events for Philip Borland. Math Motors probably had a car that could have won the race. After the restart, Lucas Sweeney tries to negotiate with the 5-0 of J.W. Lester, but Lester gets away from Sweeney and makes up one of his laps. The battle for second ensues between Kiriki Hitsuno, Tiffany Matthews, and Allie Riggs. Hitsuno gets around Matthews on the outside. I think Hitsuno's got the talent to run up front consistently. She just needs to stop crashing into things. And it didn't take Hitsuno long to reel in Lucas Sweeney. And here she comes around the outside. She's almost making it look easy. I think MRD Motorsports has a pretty good run going, and they've definitely needed it. Here comes Quiggles bearing down on the leaders. I think it was a matter of time before you saw him coming back up towards the front. And there he goes, right by Lucas Sweeney. And it looks like he's going to set up Hitsuno for the next couple of corners. Actually, scratch that. He slides in behind the 6. But a few moments later, Quiggles is going to try to mount a charge on the inside of Hitsuno. It's not quite working out so far. Hitsuno's doing a pretty good job at holding him off. And now it looks like Sweeney wants second back.
I think Quiggles was pushing it a lot more than Hitsuno and Sweeney were, because now Hitsuno and Sweeney are able to keep up with him, and just a few laps before, Quiggles was coming very quickly.
Lucas Sweeney retook the second spot from Quiggles, but here comes Quiggles back around the 8 car. And this time, Quiggles has a little bit of breathing room to work on the 6 car. And wow, look at that run he got into 3. He's already next to the 6. We'll see if he can complete the pass in turns 1 and 2. He made it look very easy when he got by Sweeney. I hate to keep saying that over and over, but Quiggles has just been that fast. And I think he's got Hitsuno cleared coming down the backstretch, so Ebenezer Quiggles Jr. moves into the lead once again. And it didn't take him long to build up a commanding lead over the rest of the field. We're looking at him from the top of the front stretch grandstands, and as we focus on him, the second place car never comes into view. The night is going to come to an end for John Hawks and Jared Worth as Kyle Gaffigan gets into the back of the 945, taking both Hawks and Worth into the wall. I'm not sure why that didn't bring out a caution. That did a lot of damage to both the 945 and the 08 cars. Ebenezer Quiggles continues to extend his lead over the rest of the field. He's pulling to the inside. I think he's got a problem.
And it would be a cut tire that puts Quiggles out of contention for now. That team would spend a few laps repairing that car as the tire tore up his fender a little bit. Tough break for Quiggles, who easily has the dominant car. We'll have to see if he can get back up there in the next segment.
This puts Kiriki Hitsuno back in the lead, and she's got a rather comfortable margin over Lucas Sweeney in second place at the moment. Laura Cyrus is up to third in the 102, although she's facing a little bit of pressure from Bigsby Foot in the 14. Kyle Gaffigan is still running in fifth despite his run-in with John Hawks and Jared Worth. Cyrus is currently third in points despite running very quietly. She has quite the knack for sneaking into good results without anybody noticing, but that probably has more to do with her not being the most outgoing driver in the series. I'd say that's a huge understatement right there. She goes out of her way to avoid talking to anybody. Yeah, no kidding. I believe that when she won that truck race at Rockford a couple years ago, she didn't even go to victory lane. They eventually found her in her car reading a book. I guess for Cyrus, her actions speak louder than words. Well, we got sidetracked with that little story. You saw Bigsby Foot get by Cyrus for third. The next caution came out for Mike Andrews blowing up, and Dan Richards runs into the back of him. I don't think Richards knew where the 500 was going, and Nick Howard gets a big piece of that as well. Andrews was having a very good run in that 500 car, but his night comes to an end early. And here's Kiriki Hitsuno running into the back of Dan Richards as she tries to get out of her pit stall. She's going to have to back up the car and try again, and in doing so, she loses a number of positions. But thanks to Hitsuno's mistake, Lucas Sweeney inherits the lead. Quiggles is in front of Sweeney, but remember that Quiggles is off the lead lap. Sweeney starts to pull away from second place Allie Riggs as Riggs comes under attack from Tiffany Matthews. But Bigsby Foot would start coming to life, and he eventually comes after Tiffany Matthews for second, and it didn't take him long to reel in Lucas Sweeney. Here comes Foot setting up a pass on the outside, but Sweeney seems to be doing a pretty good job at holding him off. But here comes Foot with a bit of momentum off the corner. In fact, that's a pretty big run that the 14 got. Coming into 3, I think he's definitely got the 8 this time, and Bigsby Foot will now sweep into the lead. And Foot will face no other challenge on his way to leading lap number 400 and collecting the 20 bonus points. And here are the cars that made it through. We didn't talk about Jim Hayes much during that second segment. He's still up in the top 5. J.W. Lester made up all but one lap. And Frank Azure is the 25th and final car to make it through. And he will also start the third segment up front because the field is going to be inverted. However, Ebenezer Quiggles' cut tire put him back in 24th, and so Quiggles will start on the front row. But Frank Azure gets a great start. His teammate and nephew Nick is going for second and trying to keep Quiggles at bay, but Quiggles is just too strong off the corner for Nick. Quiggles then tries to mount a charge on the inside of Frank Azure, but Azure is doing a very good job holding off Quiggles with a very low-budget team compared to the high amount of funding that Marcus Leonard is putting into Quiggles' car. And look who's coming after Quiggles for second. Leslie Riggs doing a great job recovering from that little tussle with Kurt Walker in the second segment. I think she could possibly have something for these leaders in these final 100 laps. A good night for Ben Atkins suddenly turns sour as Jim Hayes turns the 84 into the inside wall coming off of turn number 2. Atkins slides back up onto the track, but because there is no traffic coming, the caution does not come out. Caution 9 comes out on lap 408. Allie Riggs gets into the back of Bigsby Foot. This causes a huge stack up in turn 4, and several cars go into the wall. Bigsby Foot gets up onto his side. Lucas Sweeney, Eric Jackson, and Vincenzo Focisato get a big piece of that as well. Here it is again. Allie Riggs is basically just pushing the 14 car all the way through turn 4. That knocks Eric Jackson onto the apron. He comes back up and takes everyone into the wall, but I wouldn't say that that was Jackson's fault. I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of this as we get closer and closer to the end of the race. Patience just seems to decrease along with the lap count. After the restart, Ebenezer Quiggles makes a very quick pass on Frank Azure. I think he caught him off guard. Quiggles leads the lap, but Frank Azure is trying to fight back. He has the preferred line right here, and he does get a big run off of 2. Frank Azure is doing an absolutely phenomenal job trying to hold off Quiggles, but Quiggles definitely has the better car here, and he outbrakes Azure going into 3. Frank Azure would then fall victim to J.W. Lester. I think Azure just used up a lot of his stuff. Oh no, I think he has a problem, and he gets hit by the 46A. Rachel Rainsford has nowhere to go, gets collected, and here comes the rest of the field. Several cars pile in. Jennifer Goodwin's car is completely destroyed. Here is Michael Madrigal. He piled into the 460 as well, and then got clobbered by several other people. Bigsby Foot, Tiffany Matthews, Allie Riggs, So there goes the 20 bonus points for Bigsby Foot, as he will not finish this race. But this has got to be gut-wrenching for the Azures. They worked so hard to get both of their cars into the race, and they had such a great start to this segment, but now they both go out in the same incident.
I'd have to say that was a much bigger wreck than it needed to be.
And now here is Lucas Sweeney getting turned into the inside wall by Kiriki Hitsuno after contact with Vincenzo Foce-Sato. Now this happened in the back of the field, like with Ben Adkins, and so the caution didn't come out.
The night has really been going downhill in a hurry for Sweeney, hasn't it?
Back up front, here comes J.W. Lester challenging Ebenezer Quiggles for the lead. Leslie Riggs is still lurking back in third, waiting for the right moment to strike. Quiggles is doing a good job holding off Lester right now, but Lester has the preferred line through the corners, and he really outbreaks the Division by Zero car coming into 3, and so J.W. Lester will sweep into the lead. Caution 11 came out on lap 431 as Dan Richards gets into the back of Trey Ashby coming off of turn 2. Ashby slams into the wall hard as both cars come back up onto the track and collect several others. This will be another accident for Eric Jackson and Zachary Zins. Dan Lecklater and Ryan Reffett are collected as well. Your eyes are not fooling you. Only 9 cars are taking this restart. All hell is broken loose in this final segment, and it certainly shows.
And that means only 9 drivers are getting points tonight. That's good news for points leader Quiggles and third place Laura Cyrus, but not so much for everybody else.
One of the survivors is Kurt Walker, who is currently battling with Leslie Riggs for third. Walker has not won a race since his championship year in 2007, but since he scaled back to a partial schedule this year, he's been rather fast.
We've brought this up before, and we've mentioned how scaling back has done some good for other drivers, such as Cody Richards, who got his first win after he went to a part-time schedule. So this could be exactly what Walker needs in order to get back into victory lane.
And now Kiriki Hitsuno is coming after Riggs for 4th. I think Riggs is saving her stuff for the final laps of this race.
That or her car just isn't that good tonight.
No, I disagree. M&J and Riggs definitely have some of the best equipment in the series. And Leslie Riggs is a pretty smart driver. I think she's just hanging back and waiting to see if everyone else just wrecks themselves, and then she'll come in and pick up the pieces. Quiggles has really been putting some pressure on the 5-0 car in these last few laps, and here he comes. He wants the lead back. I think he was almost pushing Lester throughout that corner, but Lester is able to drive away from him with that momentum. But the leaders would then encounter the lap car of Zachary Zins. That definitely helps Quiggles close the gap. Oh, I think he just pushed the 5-0 out of the way, and Quiggles is going to take the lead once again. But, as we all know, the officials don't like it when people bump each other out of the way for the lead.
Yeah, these guys can wreck each other for every other position, but if you touch the leader, we throw the book at you.
Let's go on board with Quiggles and look at that pass again. He's right up on Lester's bumper, and it definitely looked like he pushed Lester out of the groove. But here comes J.W. Lester for the lead once again. Now, I think if he can get the lead back, then the officials just might not do anything about that bump. And Lester gets a very nice run through the corner, and he clears Quiggles. So we may just go on as if nothing happened. Kurt Walker has kept the leaders within his sights, but here comes Zachary Zins into the 99. He's probably going to impede the 98. Oh, no, he just blew up! Ah, what a tough break for Walker. He has had so much bad luck within the past few years, and now he gets a top 5 run going, and this happens.
And he was the only driver on his team to qualify for this race, so that just puts a cap on a dismal weekend for Kurt Walker Motorsports.
And as we were talking about that, Quiggles takes the lead back from J.W. Lester cleanly this time. I wouldn't be surprised if J.W. Lester stuck around after having such a phenomenal run in his debut.
This race is looking a lot like how the Rockford 200 usually goes. You would get 1 or 2 of the one-off drivers up there with the leaders, and more often than not, the one-off driver won the race.
The caution came out again for debris on lap number 478.
That must have been some pretty small debris. I looked all over the track and I didn't really see anything.
The restart came with less than 20 laps to go, and Ebenezer Quiggles Jr. got a huge jump on J.W. Lester. But Kiriki Hitsuno's car would start to come to life, and she comes after Lester for second.
I can't say I'm too surprised. Hitsuno was running very strong towards the 400 lap mark before she ran into the back of Dan Richards in the pit lane. Kevin Monroe, it may surprise you to know, is still in the race. Yeah, I had expected all of the stars to blow up in a long race such as this one, but it's nice to see a few of them still running, especially Monroe, who it seems has had most of the reliability problems this year. However, Monroe does appear to be struggling a bit with that 63 car, so perhaps that team sacrificed a bit of power for reliability. But he's guaranteed a top 10 finish at this point, so I don't think that's too much of a problem for him. JW Lester decides that he wants the second spot back from Kiriki Hitsuno. Hitsuno seems to be trying to defend the inside line, but there's one problem. That's not where Lester is running. Lester goes for the gap and pulls even with Hitsuno through the corner, and he gets a big run off of 2. Hitsuno tries to come back after Lester in the closing laps of the race, and she almost pushed into the 5-0 car coming through the corner. Hitsuno is really trying to make that inside line work, but as we've seen so many times in this race, that's not exactly where you want to be, but she's making it work. So Hitsuno clears Lester on the inside and moves back into second, but here he comes again. I think she's still trying to defend that inside line. I'm not too sure what she was thinking. Lester is sure to take advantage, but coming into the corner, Hitsuno tries really hard to outbrake him, but this is shaping up to be one of the best battles all night. Hitsuno trying really hard to work with what she's got, that being the inside, but ultimately Lester is going to overpower her. But in the meantime, Ebenezer Quiggles Jr. drives off to a comfortable lead, and Quiggles comes off the corner on his way to taking the inaugural Mini Indy 500 and his third victory of the season. Quiggles scores a whopping 130 points for the win and leading at lap number 200. JW Lester, second in his debut with a brand new team. Kiriki Hitsuno didn't have the best of starts to this race, but she made up a lot of ground to finish in third. Laura Cyrus came into this race third in points, and with the misfortunes and DNQs of her rivals, this is going to help her quite a bit in the standings. Leslie Riggs puts together an awesome 5th place run. She's definitely needed a run like that. Kevin Monroe's car would stay together as he finishes 6th. Rachel Rainsford 7th. She is one of her better runs of the year. Zachary Zins finishes 8th, the first car off the lead lap. And unfortunately, Kurt Walker and Dan Lecklater get nothing as they failed to finish the race. Let's take a look at the point standings, and no surprise, Ebenezer Quiggles is still the leader. In fact, he's got a huge lead over Laura Cyrus, but that isn't quite a full race. The most points you can gain or lose in a race is 115, so if Cyrus wins the next race and Quiggles doesn't finish, she could be the points leader. Herbie Finkelberg failed to finish the race, but he still retains third. You have Jenny Kuznetsov and Libby Bell failed to qualify, but they still keep their spots in the top 5. David Krikorian is 6th, Eric Jackson is 7th, Alex Carson and Bixby Foote are tied for 8th place. They are both 230 points behind the leader, and Leslie Riggs moves her way up into the top 10. Robert Scott is 11th, Ashley Tucker 12th after a very scary incident in the second segment of the race. Casey Campbell is 13th, Rip Tyler 14th. Darren Grant is 15th in his rookie season. He's been running very quietly and staying out of trouble. Michael Madrigal failed to finish, and so he couldn't capitalize on everybody in front of him who DNQ'd. Likewise for Benji Flynn and Andy Pearson. And then rounding out the top 20 is a tie for 19th between Bobby Porto and Scott Dalitz.